this civilization submerged and the remnants found their way to other areas where they had a hand in making the ancient civilizations like Chaldea and Babylonia, Ur, and Egypt the great civilizations that they were in the beginning of our history. The language of the motherland was Naga Maya, and virtually all of the major world languages are filled with these Maya words. About half of the Japanese language is Kara Maya. India has Maya in it, and Mexican Indians can speak quite well with Japanese because their languages are so similar. Egyptian, Chaldean, and dozens of later languages were riddled with words and symbols from the motherland. Most words which had a C sound like a K were originally from the original language. Well, family names, names of simple actions and instruments are often similar in languages spread all over the planet. Showing, of course, there had to be an original source language. Well, in Latin America, the Maya spoke for the past hundreds of years has been corrupted by Aztec and Nahuatl, yet the words for Ma have survived as mother in most languages. According to the ancient tablets, the world was created in 7 periods of time, and our species was given an imperishable spirit after the fashion of our Creator. Later versions in various later cultures distorted many of these original concepts. The Hebrew historical records like the Bible are examples of this. Many of the early books of the Old Testament were actually written by Moses from Egyptian temple records in many cases. And they were originally in Egyptian hieroglyphics. And when these were translated, the experts of the time made the same mistake as they do today. They often translate literal meanings from symbols which only represented something. Well, Churchward and many open-minded researchers found that most of the serious creation records of all later cultures were filled with errors and nonsense. And 800 years after Moses died, Ezra and others literally butchered the original concepts of the great leaders and gods in the motherland. Well, while Churchward's book sold to the public for many years, his concepts were never really accepted by the state-funded experts. They often ignored his brilliant translation keys from these ancient motherland documents. And only private organizations like the Rosicrucian Order in San Jose, California, ever took the time to check out his research and confirm it by their own comparisons. Well, surprisingly enough, according to the translations, the motherland, the original founders of the great cultures and cities of Latin America, were white-skinned, blue-eyed gods with beards. They brought great technology and knowledge to the original Indians of the area, Latin America. And these gods did not rely on the usual ground vehicles, but used aerial vehicles. And here's a design from around 8,000-year-old Sanskrit translations. Or in India yet. Well, today's experts like to scoff at such concepts, and they tell us they'd not even invented the wheel yet. Yet this is ridiculous, since children's toys of all of these great cultures often had wheels on them. Are we supposed to think that they couldn't even adapt them to larger vehicles? Hardly. Well, the early temple drawings and frescoes had pictures of these aircraft and wheelless vehicles in many of them, but the church and state authorities quickly obliterated such evidence every time a new temple was located. And Stacy Judd, historian and writer of the 20s, had many pictures of this high technology in his original Atlantis Mother of Empires book. Yet all the public copies were bought up and destroyed in the 1930s. And only the censored second edition is still available today by this remarkable explorer and American historian. And the few copies of the first edition are in private vaults. And the people are not about ready to make them public even yet. Well, before the 3 world cataclysms in the past, a number of Indian traditions in Latin America tell us that there was once a great sea in the middle of South America. And after the first disaster, known as the Great Fire, the great mountains on the west coast arose and took many great cities of the ancient world skyward. And Tiwanaku is an example that still exists and puzzles the later Spaniards and today's scientists. They were told that ancient white gods had built the city before the mountains were so high. And in 1972, an Amazon Indian named Nara told anthropologists amazing details of all this in chronicles that his tribe had kept for thousands of years. The Akakor document paralleled the concepts of James Churchward and told of the early cities and their god rulers. The Mexican Codex Trajano tells of beams of light coming from a celestial sphere, a sphere used by the gods. And to call such advanced craft flying saucers is ironically a term which would be suitable for our present mental levels. The land vehicles in use to move heavy equipment in those days by the gods' subjects were wheelless cargo vehicles. They had no wheels. They didn't need wheels. And all over the ancient empire areas of Latin and South America, there was very male-made roads that are still in existence. And they show no evidence of tire wear from the usual wheels. And this is a view of the many remarkable terraces that allowed agriculture in this hilly area of Latin America. Few tourists ever see this. It's interesting that a few delicate art objects, like cocks of inlaid gold and precious stones, are also found in the Zebwati ruins in Africa, perhaps like the cock found in the Great Pyramid by the Caliph, which of course leads us off into the Arabian Nights fantasy again. Well, the Mayas considered themselves descendants of the gods of the East. And these divine leaders came from an area, and their land sank in the sea, according to their records. And they built these huge cities with water and waste systems, just as they are today. And they flourished until their leaders left, and later Spanish barbarians came for what was left of their civilizations, the remnants of their past glorious cities and monolithic systems, interconnected cities all over Latin America. Several private researchers claimed to have talked with the descendants of the Mayas who still have some of the more ancient records missed by the destructive Spaniards. Thousands of descendants still live in Yucatan and Guatemala. And here's another descendant of the Mayas viewing the temples and palaces of the ancient ruins of Tiwanaku through one of its several portals. As we pointed out, this city was in existence before the mountains in this area rose, according to most of the traditions. And this other portal, called the Gate of the Sun, is around 12,000 feet above sea level in an area south of Lake Titicaca in Bolivia. We all know, of course, that there are huge monolithic buildings and stone walls all across Latin America. Today's technologies could not even duplicate many of them. Not even a playing card will fit between these stones that you see here. And these examples are in Peru. And some of these are 20 feet high, and the blocks weigh tons. There are other great monolithic ruins and strange formations that most researchers never even find. An example is this intricate launching platform for strange aircrafts of some past. It's in Bolivia, and it's several acres of apertures and slots and tracks and tubes at a site which has a vortex energy point coming into it. It was these vortex areas that some aircraft used to gain free energy boosts to other grid points on the planet and off the planet. And scientists have absurd theories on this site, like being several acres of sacrificial areas for human sacrifice rites. Nonsense. Any adolescent can see the remnants of great civilizations when they stumble across them. And other evidence of very high cultures of antiquity include the stone pavements with dressed and quarried rocks below the levels where mastodon bones are found, and stone pavements deep under the ice in the Antarctica. We could go on for hours on other strange ruins, monolithic ruins from cultures long past the motherland, their various colonies. Now, there are researchers that feel the legendary land of Ophir was in Zimbabwe, Africa, in the middle 1860s. An explorer discovered the ruins of this city and its advanced culture, just as in the colossal Machu Picchu ruins of South America that we see here. There are unusual oval towers, which were held to be the chambers of flying men. Why? Well, these towers only had openings at the top. Both cities had similar rockwork and quarried crystal carvings. Other buried antiquities, similar. Well, off the Chilean coast, of course, is Easter Island. Gigantic statues that have long puzzled researchers. And these are hardly the work of primitives who came along after the resourceful ancients. And here's a little more sophisticated statue of the Maya cultures. Archaeologists ignore churchward symbolic keys to reading the designs and often make up theories on the meanings of all this symbolism. The Amazons of legend are another myth culture the scholars usually dismiss, and yet the traditions continue. And Spanish explorers encountered women warriors and named the Amazon River after them. As late as 1958, explorers around the headwater of the Orinoco River were told by natives that there were fierce tribes, women warriors. They were still flourishing in the more remote regions of the area. was Nagamaya, and virtually all of the major world languages are filled with these Maya words. About half of the Japanese language is Kara Maya. India has Maya in it, and Mexican Indians can speak quite well language. Well, family names, names of simple actions and instruments are often similar in languages spread all over the planet. Showing, of course, there had to be an original source language. Well, with Japanese, because their languages are so similar. Egyptian, Chaldean, and dozens of later languages were riddled with words and symbols from the motherland. Most words which had a C sound like a K were originally from the original. In Latin America, the Maya spoke for the past hundreds of years has been corrupted by Aztec and Nahuatl. Yet the words for Ma have survived as mother in most languages. According to this civilization submerged, and the remnants found their way to other areas where they had a hand in making the ancient civilizations like Chaldea and Babylonia, and Egypt the great civilizations that they were in the beginning of our history. The language of the motherland